This is the Nebraska Greats, a weekly podcast as a service to the Nebraska Greats Foundation, which serves former collegiate athletes facing medical needs and financial challenges. Your tax-deductible contribution will change the life of a former college sports hero. Please give online at negreats.org. And now, here's your host, Corey Mckeon.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Nebraska Greats podcast. This is your host, Corey Mckeon, second time hosting, so I guess I didn't screw up the first time too much. But this is the Nebraska Greats podcast produced by the Nebraska Greats Foundation, which serves for collegiate athletes facing medical need and a financial challenge. You can learn more or give generously by visiting www.negreats.org. And that money you're giving does not go straight into our guest's pocket. Ben Eisenhart, former Nebraska great, number 46, strong safety, every special team imaginable, and giver of many concussions. Welcome, Benny Eyes. How are you, bud?
Good, man. Are you seeing people get paid for this? My check must have got lost in the mail.
Well, download the Venmo app. I'd be happy to give a few dollars over to you.
All right, perfect. No, glad to be here.
As long as it goes to Bud Lights. You know, that
yes,
this day and age, especially during the Husker games these days when you need about 14 to 50 of them.
I got to watch the cows. I'm on the Truly bandwagon, man.
Hey, it's Truly weather. There's a good sponsor for us. Truly, if you're listening, please reach out. Corey Mckeon at AOL.com. Yes, Ben, I still have an AOL account.
Perfect.
So Ben and I, teammates, you know, all 4.5 years of college. Ben graduated from the greatest institution this side of the Mississippi, known as Culbertson.
Yes.
The Bearcats. Am I right, Ben?
The Bears, not the Bearcats, the Bears.
Or am I thinking of the Bear Cave?
Well, you've been there. You've been there as well. We've all been to the Bear Cave.
So Ben and I, we've been friends a long time. We played alongside each other. A lot of group hits on very, very good athletes. And what Ben and I were kind of discussing before this call is somewhat the toughest schedule that we had faced our senior year in 2007. And even before that in 2006, just the caliber of athletes we played. I remember, Ben, after we finished our bowl game, I think it was 2005, we had just beaten Michigan in the Alamo Bowl.
Yep.
We're all of us and our buddies and our teammates, we're all texting. We're sitting there. I was back home in Chicago.
We were planning our spring break trip.
That's right. And we were watching the national championship, USC versus Texas.
Which was the greatest national championship that's ever been.
Still standing as the best.
I mean, had to be.
And I remember crossing my fingers thinking, man, I hope USC wins this because that will guarantee Leinart, that will guarantee Bush that they go to the NFL, and then we don't have to play them in 2006.
Yeah, luckily they left anyway, but still, that USC team. No, but that we obviously didn't play their national championship teams from 2004 and 5, and then in the national championship in 2005. But 2006 and 7 obviously were, up there as well. That you had 30 to 35 future NFL players on those two squads.
Wow.
So yeah, it was a total different league than we were used to.
They had a very potent offense that year, but their defense
was
just
the real thing.
Unbelievably talented. And I
think of the 30 guys, 20 of them were defensive players. Their offense was good, but their defenses they really stood out.
So I remember just seeing a throwback for, I think it was a Sports Illustrated cover, and they had their 3-star linebackers on the cover that were all on that squad, and they didn't even have Rivers on there.
Yeah, Keith Rivers wasn't even on there
in the league. So
in the 07 team, Cushing doesn't even play in 07 against us because he's hurt. So his backup, Clay Matthews, is the one who starts the game. So it's like, little different thing here.
Well, it just eons of talents on that squad. Clay Matthews, Rivers, Ray Monaluga, and then you had Brian Cushing.
Yep.
All four with obviously great careers in the NFL. And I felt like we had a really talented and deep offense that year. Obviously, Zach Taylor at the helm.
Yeah.
And then we had 4 running backs that all carried the ball quite a bit. We had some good receivers. We had Maurice Purify, Terrence Dunn,
and Swift, and
Swifty, Todd Peterson, and we struggled to move the ball on them.
Well,
and
that
just
was
eons of their talent.
I don't know how you felt about it, but that was like when USC, that was the only team in my games of playing that when I was like going, I just felt like I was out of my league a little bit. And it proved going forward that to be the case when you have 30 plus guys on the NFL on those teams playing, but on the field with them, they just seem bigger. They just seem faster. They just seem stronger than anybody else we played.
And that goes to their program success as well, both what Pete Carroll was doing on the field in practice, their off-season training. But when you load the roster with that kind of talent, you see it nowadays with the Clemson teams. They always graduate a lot of great people. Alabama, they always graduate a lot of guys to the NFL early, and they just get reloaded over and over. What do we got to do in Nebraska to get to that point? That's what I'm curious about. We do that.
I guess that part comes. I would like to see more player development of what we get, and then worry about. We need the talent. We obviously do, but I feel like we got to see these guys that we have play better than they do. You know what I mean? Like, and that's I would love to get 4 and 5 star guys. I would love that, but you know what? Iowa State doesn't get 4 and 5 star guys, and look how they're good. Wisconsin doesn't get 4 and 5 star guys. We can sit there and talk about the Alabamas, the Clemsons, the Ohio States that just have a never ending supply of talent to pick from. But I also we can sit there. We're not as good as them because we don't get those guys. But I can also point to teams that don't get those guys and we're not as good as. So that's, that's my main thing I would like to see us improve on. But I know that's a lot easier said than done, but I think that's my main concern.
So I agree with you. I had a great conversation with Sean Callahan not too long ago, just discussing from our years at Nebraska, how the recruiting classes ended up in the top, one, I think the lowest we had was in the low 30s to a top team under Bill Callahan. And how who was the most productive in those classes. And when you look at the list and the list that they compiled, it's really not the big star guys that were doing a lot. It was, the 3 stars, the walk-ons, that came into the program more dedicated, that ended up producing more and being more of a presence on the field at Memorial Stadium. I look back and I think the big class that we had while we were there was Marlon Lucky. Philip Dillard was on that team. We had some really good JUCO transfers. Sue, obviously the biggest name
on that one.
So we certainly had some big names, but if you take a look at those classes, did Marlon Lucky live up? Probably not. He got a lot of carries, and I always felt that he took carries away from guys like Cody Glenn, Brandon Jackson, ended up being extremely talented. What kind of happens with the development of these players now versus then is, you want to see your 4 stars, your 5 stars play right away. And sometimes that's just not the case. If you force it, you look at injuries, you just look at lack of production and try to force them into those spots. Player development is certainly number one.
But wouldn't you agree that there's something wrong if you have say a 3.5, 4-star kid come in who's 18 years old and he's better than a 3-star 22-year-old kid that's been there for 4 years?
But just experience just doesn't get the amount of measure as it used to. I just wished we would be, because I know of myself when I was 18 and I know myself when I was done at 22, and they're not even close to the same person. And I just wish that the development, the strength training, the nutrition, everything else, that we get the most out of these people where, yes, we want that 4-star freshman to contribute and to be able to contribute, but we don't want him the day he steps foot on campus to be our best option. That's very accurate. if you're banking on an 18-year-old coming in and filling a gap for you, there's so much risk in that situation.
Yeah.
Especially with a guy that's been dependable, has had practice reps. I mean, you look back,
who knows the system, who knows like everything. Like that guy,
yep.
That 22-year-old should be better. He should be, right. and unless the 4-star is an absolute freak, which I'd love to get those guys. I would love to. But I'm just saying that the 3-star 22-year-old should be better than the 18-year-old 4-star.
So let's look back. Yeah, let's look back at our class. I mean, our running back in our class was Tier Green.
And who played 3 different positions in 3 years. I mean,
never really grasped it. Never really grasped the position at running back. He got moved to corner a little bit, moved to safety. They tried him out at wide receiver. And then you get guys who just aren't the right fit that you maneuver. I think if Cody Glenn started at running back, I always felt in the practice reps that he was tough. He was a tough running back to bring down. He gave effort on every play. But, they felt maybe he'd be a better fit at linebacker, move him to linebacker, and he produces there. And Cody Glenn wasn't a big 4 or 5-star guy.
No, he was just big and strong. Cody was big, strong, and fast, and he had a knack for the game. And I know those running backs and stuff, they love the ball in their hands. They want to carry the ball. But I think when it proved, his senior year when he moved to linebacker and he had all that success, and the same thing when he went to the NFL for a couple of years, he was playing linebacker. And I think that was probably a more natural fit for him. But those guys that are used to getting the ball, it's tough to take the ball out of their hands. That's for sure.
No kidding. I mean, talk about yourself for a second. I mean, how many rushing yards did you have in high school? I mean, you were the state holder for a long time until some little guy named Danny Woodhead decided to step up. He didn't really pan out.
He ended up being okay. That's remember we used to get in all those. Remember the arguments we used to get in about Danny Woodhead? Because I knew Danny since like junior high, and I would tell you guys. Me and Bo would tell you that how good he was, and he's da da da. And you and Sean Hill would be like, "Well, then why is he at Shadron if he's so good?" I'm like, I don't know, but he's better than Shadron said. I can tell you that. We get in the biggest arguments, and after 10 years in the league, I think Sean Hill was finally like, "Oh yeah, he must have been all right."
Time will tell on that one.
Yep.
I mean, that's what you always used to say, and you're right, Benny. I'll give it to you after all these years.
You're finally gonna admit it.
And now, not only has he whooped us at football, now he can whoop us at golf. He's like a scratch handicap.
Well, he's got too much time in his hands now. I got to talk to Danny about it. I mean, who gets to retire at 35 years old, 34 years old, and just kick it? I mean, come on.
Probably every Shadron State graduate that comes out of the place. But, our debate back then was we knew he was talented, but we don't think he could have fit in on that roster because we had 4 guys that were pretty good. It would have been tough to beat out Marlon Lucky, Brandon Jackson, Cody Glenn. That'd been tough to do.
No, I agree. I just think that he found his way on a roster pretty much everywhere he went. And he would have found his way on a roster here. A slot guy or any punt returner, any of those things, he would have been dynamite at. But people want to blame, Callahan on that one. Really, it was he was an in-between guy. He's a senior when Solich is there in the fall, and then Callahan's there in the spring, and you get lost in the shuffle, and the offer was never made. And obviously hindsight 2020 is the wrong call, but that's what happens.
I go back and I think about we were discussing how difficult the schedules that we faced, both in our 06 year and 2007 year. And if you go back and look at the records from our senior year, which was really the fall of Bill Callahan's year, Zach Taylor graduates, goes on into the NFL. We have Sam Keller transfer in. They don't give Joey Gans the nod, which we thought, and you look at the guys' production in practice, which we had to face him every day, Ben, and they were both good. I mean, Sam Keller was more of a style quarterback that Bill Callahan wanted. But if you give the nod to Joey Gans, in that 2007 season, I think we get a couple more wins, and then they're even posed more for the 2008 season.
Yeah, and you look at like Sam was he fit the mold of the picture. He's 6'4", 240, pro style quarterback, and that's what Callahan wanted, right? I mean, and you got Joey Gans, who's 6 foot and 200 pounds, and it didn't fit, on paper, you should have went with Sam. I understand that. But, what in practice and in the game, it just showed a different picture of what should have been happening that year.
Yeah, and you look at the NFL draft that's coming up here and the kind of quarterbacks that are hot commodities right now, the Justin Fields of the world, the BYU kid, North Dakota State kid, they're all kind of Joey Gans type style quarterbacks, the guys that just want to commit and win, and will do it scratch and claw and do whatever it takes to get there. And it's guys like that, the 3-star guys like Joey Gans, that kind of push your program forward. It's not just a quarterback position. It's a locker room presence. It's a leadership. It's having the attitude. I always felt that we had guys like that. And I don't know who the guys like that are at the university now. And I think that's really the big gap in the culture that we see, even under Bill Callahan, Frank Solich before that. We felt like we were pushing each other as the coaches were pushing us. And when we had a collapse in 2007, our senior year, you go back, you look at the strength of schedule. Wake Forest gets into the Orange Bowl that year or the year after. KU, Orange Bowl that year. There were some really good teams that we ended up facing up against after a big graduating class from 2006 with a lot of NFL talent there.
Well, that's why when I look at this, how it ended up being that year where we go 5-7, really, when you look at that, we should have beat Texas, that fourth quarter fall apart, and we should have beat Colorado. So we're 7-5. That's the best case scenario. We're 7-5. We're not going to beat Missouri. Goes 12-1 that year.
Yep.
KU's 11-2. I mean, those two teams were destined to do what they did. We weren't going to beat Oklahoma State that year. They had too much talent there, whatever. So it's not like, I agree. Like we win 2 more games, right? But both those games were Joey Gans, right? Playing. So you look at it, you're like, okay, could have 07 went better? Yes. But how much better could have went? Instead of 5-7, we're 7-5. Other than that, it's hard to see another win on that schedule. With the schedule we played, it's hard to see it.
No, even Nevada had a talented team in the offseason, and we whooped them. We go at Wake Forest, 104 degrees.
Who's a great team that year.
Had an unbelievable team. We get stomped by USC at home, which I really felt in 2006 with the team that we had. If we played USC at home that year, we win. It's a tight game. It's a last possession game in 2006.
Yeah. 2006 at home and better. Yeah.
You flip those years, and I think that's a win. We pull off a quick one against Ball State, who also had a very talented team that year.
Very good team.
So we end up. After we go play at Missouri we were banged up. We had some injuries going into those games, but we beat a good Iowa State team. We lose to a very tough Missouri team. Oklahoma State, very good team. Then we play Texas A&M, who's another tough team, and they had a revenge game.
Yeah, we should have won. That's another one. We should have won that game. Now that I think about it, that was trash on our part.
Yeah, and then the Texas game's the big swing one where we go and lose down in the fourth quarter. So we have some tough games, but we come back on senior day. We play Kansas State, we put up 73, win 73-31.
Yep.
And then Colorado, it just ends up being one of the toughest games.
Yeah, it's snowing, it's freezing, the freaking second half punt block. Yeah, that just, like I said, you can what ifs all day you want, but you look back, and I don't ever try to be like, well, we should have been 10-2, not 7-5. I try to be realistic when I look back at the schedule. Who we played.
You at quarterback, me at running back, we would have been fine.
Totally.
Yeah, right. I could barely throw the ball 20 yards. I know. Yeah. When you talk about highlights of your career, Ben, what do you think about?
I think, one of the greatest, you count the whole week, that Alamo Bowl in 2005 is about as good as it got. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes. Just the game itself, but the preparation, the week leading up to it, we wanted to win. We were playing a tough team.
Michigan was a good team. They had, that whole roster was loaded with NFL guys, future NFL guys. And to get that win down in San Antonio,
On
Just
last second pitch back plays.
Yeah.
Trying to get thank you, Zach Bowman, for staying with it and running that down.
The Ickes strip, and you pick up.
Oh man, I forgot about that too. Mike Hart hitting me the hardest I've ever been hit, and then Jake Long hitting me the second hardest I've ever been hit.
Jake Long, God, they had Lamar Woodley, they had Chad Henne, they had everybody, man.
Breston was a stud.
Yeah, Steve Breston.
Why did we punt him the ball? Why didn't we just kick it out of bounds every time?
You know what? Because we had damn good special teams back then, Corey. That's why.
But even you give Sam Cook with his leg, who still started for
that's our punter. Exactly.
But he could put it so far out of the reach of our gunners to tackle the guy. The guy was backing up 15, 20 yards. And he had 30 yards to run because Sam pumped the ball so damn far.
He was good. But yeah, I would say that's kind of a main one. Even though it was a loss for me growing up, watching Texas and whatever, playing at Texas, and me personally having probably my best game I had in my career, even though it was a loss, the late afternoon in Austin, Texas, playing on that field against Texas, growing up, watching them as much as I did, that's a big highlight for me in my career looking back. The Big 12 championship in 2006 in Kansas City, even though it was like negative 400 degrees and I almost froze to death. That is one, a couple of those things I would say.
I'll never forget that game. But then our bench just stopped working. The heated bench stopped working. That's Stoops. He just does everything to win the game.
I know. Exactly. I think that it was so cold that warm water, that was the hoses that were running the warm water through the benches, froze.
It's insane.
That's how cold. I know.
And
for me,
go ahead.
In 2006, I wasn't playing much safety, but I was playing on every special team. So it was absolutely horrible that you'd go out on kickoff, run down on kickoff full speed, come off and stand there for however time it took. Oh, they're punting. Run out on punt, run full speed, come back on the sideline and stand. Like, I would go from sweating to freezing over about every 5 minutes for the entire 3.5 hours of that game.
That's how pneumonia started, man.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the first COVID case, right?
Yes. There. Yeah, exactly.
Coming from, you're a Nebraska kid growing up, Western Nebraska, you knew about the Huskers. I didn't know as much about the Huskers. I knew that they were always good. I knew that they had the best. It was like, they have I heard their fans are the greatest. Everyone says that. But when I sat and looked around at that stadium, Big 12 championship against Oklahoma, December, negative 15, 20 degrees.
And it felt like it. I think it was actually like 10 degrees, but still.
Wind chill, Ben. Wind chill.
I know.
But you look around and you see how much red in that stadium, and games like that, the half-ass fans of the world that would gladly sit out, and the Nebraska fans, the Husker Nation, that would double down and more would go to support you. That's what really cemented in my mind is the Husker Nation as being the top of the top. I mean, the sellout record aside, which we got to keep going, even the struggles that we're having. But that really cemented it as these are the greatest fans in college football, if not any sport. And man, I really wanted to win that game, but when the offense turns it over on your own 3-yard line, makes
the second play of the game. Yeah,
makes it
I know
it
was a hell of a game. What was it? 20. What was the final score? 21-7.
It was like
21-7, I think.
Something
right?
Like that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was we had our struggles on defense in 2007, but God, in 2006, you guys, the D on that game. I mean, we on offense I think had the ball inside their 40 like 6 or 7 times and only scored once.
Yeah.
I mean, you go back and watch that game. Oklahoma defensively just had a hell of a game plan on us. I mean, they were blitzing Zach from every angle, every direction, multiple directions that entire game. You could just tell Zach could never feel comfortable. Our pass protection, we could never get comfortable in that game.
You know what? They do a fake punt that there's a hold that doesn't get called, and that's what really turned the game because that puts them down in the red zone, and they go in and score, and our offense just couldn't respond, like you said. Zach got lit up, just a lot of heart.
Yeah, he was getting lit up.
And that's was feeling the cold.
Hats off to the Stoops brothers. They can put a defensive scheme together. There's no denying that. And they had it. They had it ready for us, and we just didn't have an answer.
So we've got the spring game coming up down the road here, May 1. What are your thoughts on what you want to see from Scott Frost and company?
As you know, an old special teams guy myself, my God, we got to be better on special teams. We cannot. We got to either get touchbacks or we got to pin people inside the 20. We cannot let offenses start at the 40-yard line every time we kick off the ball. And the same thing with punt. Like, we can't. I just don't understand some of the special teams incidences last year that I hope that. And it's hard to see in a spring game, but I just hope that that's a huge focus point in spring and fall. And I really hope we see a difference there. I'm not that great at math, but I'd rather have the team start at the 20 than the 40 every time they have the ball. So let's see how that goes.
We're not big math guys on this. We're not going to talk too much advanced analytics between the two of us. It's going to be about your brain, your heart, and the other stuff. And that's what we think wins games more so than analytics. But I want to see O-line, D-line. That's always the key to any successful program. I want to see those guys really emerge and play well and be disciplined. I want to get away from being cute. I want to stop trying to outsmart ourselves on offense. I mean, Jay Moore and I do the post-game podcast, and the thing we're always talking about is we're throwing the ball backwards. We're throwing the ball lateral. We're doing all these weird, long developing plays. If you've got the talent that we should have up front, and you've got some dependable running backs, let them win games for you. And I just want to see that. Stop trying to outthink everyone, and let's just out tough and really outplay. Let's give our athletes a chance to be athletes. So you're going to face teams that are better than you talented. There's no doubt about it. You're going to face bigger teams, stronger teams. But when it boils down to the actual the actual determination, we should be second to none. And that's what the effort out of this game.
You can't. I mean, effort is the only thing you can control, right? So I just want to see max effort, and just like Alabama keeps being in national championships, and they have studs all over, but man, their O-line and D-line are the best in the country, and it starts there. Like me and you can say all day, like it's how good their linebackers and safeties are, but in all reality, the D-line and O-line is where the game starts and ends. And so I think we got a decent group of guys on both those fronts. So if that's your starting base is decent right there, then I think we got to be optimistic, but we also need to lean on those guys for sure.
Well, that's speaking of two diehard fans on this podcast for sure. I know we always go back and forth, and our big group, all 500 group texts that we're on, talking Huskers nonstop. And at this point, even though we might not have the win column, the check marks in the win column that we all want, I still think that everyone's still positive about Scott Frost and what he's doing. But I'd like to see him turn the corner, and I think it starts this spring. You're back. I don't
think anybody thinks Scott doesn't know what he's doing. He's proved he knows what he's doing. He's been there. He knows the place better than anybody. He's the guy for the job. I just hope that we can somehow get everybody rallied around him.
So Ben, you went from walk-on to Cletus Fisher Native Son Award winner. Where are you keeping that trophy? And tell me it's right next to the bar.
It is on top of the bar, actually. Top of the bar. So my kids can't get up and break it.
Now, soon, growing like weeds, man.
Seriously.
Well, Ben Eisenhart, we appreciate it, man. It's always fun talking with you. Looking forward to overanalyzing the Nebraska Cornhuskers with you all season. But we appreciate you and your support of the Nebraska Greats Foundation. Now, just a reminder, this is produced by the Nebraska Greats Foundation. If you know anyone, a former collegiate athlete playing from any institution, Nebraska, and any of the 16 4-year-old colleges, universities, and they have a medical need, please let us know. And you can please give generously at www.negreat.org. Ben, thank you for your time, man.
Hey.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys.
This has been Nebraska Greats, a weekly podcast serving the Nebraska Greats Foundation. You can find each episode on Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Play, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Please give generously to serve Nebraska's former sports heroes in need at negreats.org. And be sure to follow the Any Greats on Facebook and Twitter.